Hey guys, before we dive into the podcast, I just wanted to pop in here real quick and let you know that my annual masterclass, all about process, is coming back. I will be sharing the 5 steps to build your unique process and eliminate the chaos. During our time together, we will cover why you need to make a decision about who your business serves. We'll cover how to plan out your calendar so that you can gain control of your life. Yes. And work on your business to avoid burnout and overwhelm. We'll cover how to get accurate feedback on how your business is really running and the ways you can use the comparison on social media to your advantage. Yep, you heard that right. It's all about how to build a process that is unique to your business and your style. So if this sounds like everything you need to kickstart your process journey, join us in the first of 2 masterclasses happening on March 24th. To learn more, visit RebeccaHay.com/masterclass. I'll see you there. And now let's dive into the podcast.
Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today I interview Steve Ryan of Steve Ryan Designs, who is a Power of Process alumni, as well as a really awesome human being, stager, designer of Steve Ryan Designs here in Toronto. He is such a vocal contributor to our Designer Meetup Facebook group. He's always jumping in and answering questions and helping designers a lot of the times with their mindset and learning to say no. And so it just kind of came up naturally that this would be a really great conversation for us to have. He's been on the podcast before. I believe it was episode number 48. But go check it out. It's in the 40s. And that was a really great episode because in that one, we talk about not only his experience doing or taking my course, The Power of Process, and how it really redirected his focus and he completely overhauled his business model and changed directions and has transformed his business. But we also talk a little bit about men and women in the industry. And in that podcast, that's when we realized, oh shoot, this is a whole topic for a whole other podcast. So guess what? You're getting that today. Today, Steve and I dive into the differences that we have seen from our own experiences as men and women in the design industry, as entrepreneurs, and how our mindset as a woman is very different. He shares his observations that he has seen in our designer community and working with designers in person of how we respond to situations very differently and how there's an opportunity for women, especially who are like me, who sometimes hold back and care too much what other people think, to stand up and sort of go against our conditioning. We talk a lot about that. We talk about money mindset. Like sort of the second half of our conversation is all about money and how your mindset really affects you in business. And I share my own personal mindset journey when it comes to money, where I'm at right now, what I have learned, and some exercises I've done that might be useful to you too. It's just a really great conversation, super candid. I feel like we're all just hanging out in the same room, chit-chatting, which is also just kind of fun. So here you go. Here's my episode with Steve Ryan.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
You guys know there is nothing I love better than staying in my all-day PJs all day. Abode has launched my new favorite set of buttery soft pajamas that come in 3 fabulous colors: snow, camel, and my personal fave that's on the thumbnail for this podcast, midnight. I feel so put together, whether I'm recording a podcast like this, meeting a client on Zoom, or tucking myself into bed with the kids at story time. And as you all know, I'm a pretty big fan of the classics when it comes to design. And that translates to literally everything I purchase for my own home decor and my clients. And of course, my fashion. Abode also has the perfect luxurious 100% cotton timeless bedding. It pairs perfectly with my chic all-day PJs. You gotta invest in your rest. Check them out at lovemyabode.com and type in Resilient10 for $10 off your very first order. Treat yourself to the perfect pair of luxurious all-day PJs and soft cloud bed linens. Hey, Steve Ryan.
Hey. Back again.
Welcome.
He's back.
Here we go. Back again. I feel like is that a Backstreet Boys song, that Back Again? I keep having it in my head.
That's Backstreet's back. Backstreet's back.
Oh, that's it.
Backstreet's back. All right.
Do. Yeah. Well, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you back. For those who don't know who you are, who didn't get to listen to your first episode, you want to just give us a little Coles Notes of who you are?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you didn't hear my last podcast with you, you should go back and listen to it because it's great. So that's the first thing. So I'm Steve Ryan. I am a Toronto-based home stager and design professional based in Toronto. I've been doing that for just over 5 years now. I do e-design packages and I do home staging. I'm a frequent collaborator with detail staging and design here in Toronto. We are super busy right now. And I'm also an OG member of your Power of Process course. I mean, I was one of the first students that you had.
Woot.
Which led me to switch from doing just design to doing home staging and e-design. That was kind of what led me. And people can hear all about that on the original podcast that we did about a year ago.
We talk about that. And you know what? I'll get the number. Do you remember what number it was?
I don't remember. I can pull it. Are we going to pull out our phones here and look at that one?
Yeah, we are. Because people listening, it's easier to remember a number than a name.
Yeah.
So while you're doing that, I'll just add that.
We'll try and find that.
Yeah. So what I'll add is that in our last podcast episode together, which you guys will be able to listen to, we do talk about the Power of Process, the course that I have that is actually coming back soon, or maybe when this airs, it's already open. I'm not sure. But the transformation that you went through from really realizing where you wanted to focus your business and you made a change. And I'm not going to give it all away because they have to listen to the podcast.
Right. No spoiler.
Yeah. And also you are still to date the only male who has taken my courses. I love it.
Well, and that's going to kind of tie in a bit about what you and I are going to talk today, because a big thing that came out. So there was a Facebook group, obviously, for your Power Process course. And then there was, you also have a designer support group Facebook page, which I'm also on. And there have been many people, writing questions on that, like, a lot of women. So it's like me and a bunch of women, basically, right? And they're all saying like, this happened. I'm kind of wondering how to handle that. What should I do with that? And here it is. It's number 48. I'm number 48.
48.
Okay. That was the original one. All right. So one of the things that came up often on those pages were women writing questions and about how to handle things, situations that they were in, etc., that they were encountering. They were looking for some advice, and how the women who would write comments on what they thought they should do had very different comments than what I would write. Women would say like, I'm sorry that happened, la la la, and they would say, when this happened to me, I tried this, and I would generally write, that has never happened to me ever, and here's why, and it's because I'm a man. So I just don't experience that kind of thing. So I think we touched on this the last time in our last podcast about the differences that men and women in business in general. I think it's not just a design thing. In life. In life. Yes. So
and it really starts to show itself in business. So where would we like to start? So I think that, first I just want to add that I've always really valued your opinion inside our Facebook group, like not only in the Power of Process group, but I think you're also in our Designer Meetup Facebook group. And it's always wonderful to have a male point of view because it is very different. And what I love about our community and our groups and our coaching is it's so many women helping each other and supporting each other, which I love. But oftentimes it's nice to have somebody come in with a different perspective to say, and I love it. Like half the time you're just like, yeah, just do A, B, and C. Yeah. Don't do that. Right. And everyone else is like, well,
just say no to that. Right. Is all what I would say. Right.
Yeah. Just say no, not the right fit. Just ask for the money. What I mean, I'm generalizing, obviously. Yep. But, and it's always so refreshing. And because as women, and I can tell you, and you've obviously observed this, otherwise we wouldn't be here talking about it. As women, especially female creatives, I think, as creative entrepreneurs, there's a lot going on there. And I know I am generalizing, but I am generalizing based on a large volume of people that I see experiencing the same thing. And it's based on my own personal experiences we're going to talk about money. I want us to talk about money mindset because that's a huge part of it, but also just valuing our worth. And standing up for ourselves is something that I think, unfortunately, society has sort of done women a disservice historically because we're taught to be polite, don't speak up, don't interrupt, be nice. Oh, don't say that, you might hurt their feelings. And so we, at least for me, I grew up in a world where I was continually taught to just not sit and look pretty, but for lack of a better terminology, like that is kind of what it is. Like, don't speak up. Oh yes, raise your hand and ask questions, but don't rock the boat. Right. Yeah. And so there's this sort of fear of confrontation and fear of, am I good enough? Is what I have to say interesting enough? Are they going to hire me?
It's a rich tapestry. And let me just say that, you're talking about your experience, being socialized, growing up, how you were socialized. And what I can say is as a man, I didn't experience much of that. I was not taught to please people. I was not taught that I had to say yes to everything. Women are 100% socialized from birth to say yes to everything, especially to men.
Whoa. And I think too, as a parent, it's such an interesting, because I know a lot of parents are here listening. If you have young children or older children, it's, especially for me, I have one boy and one girl, and I'm constantly I'm trying to see it differently and act differently, but it's hard because I know what I was taught growing up and trying to change that experience for our children and just being aware and being conscious of it is the first step. But that is can you talk a little bit more about that? I think that's so interesting. Like what were some of the differences that you see growing up?
Oh, well, I mean, you just have to, even just generally, this ties in with money mindset. I grew up in a house where both my parents worked. But my father made more money than my mother, right? So I'm the youngest of three boys. And so I, was raised in a house where what I saw growing up is men make more money than women. You are going to be the primary breadwinner in your home, that kind of thing. These are the things that I was taught, right? Whereas, if I'd had a sister, I don't, but if I did, she would have also seen that. And she would have been taught the exact same thing, which is, men make more money than you will be relying on a man for your survival, that kind of thing. Right. And that just permeates into everything, not just that, your husband, if you have a husband, is going to make more money than you, but also that you should expect that you are simply not going to make more money than a man. Right. It just, it permeates. Yeah. Right. But, and the thing is, the other thing is that, women are always taught that they can't ever say no, right? They have to say yes to everything. And so what you've I'm sure noticed, because I know every other woman I know has noticed this, when a man says no, it is the end of the conversation. When a woman says no, it is the beginning of the negotiation. Right? When a woman says no one just goes, okay, great. Like, it's always like, well, they start
Okay, so wait, sorry, let's clarify that. So you mean that when the woman who is saying no, that same woman carries on the conversation?
No. It's if I say to you, if someone says to me, "Hey, will you do this design job for free?" or for way less than you're quoting, and I say no, that's the end of it. They go, "Okay, I'm gonna move on then," and I go, "Okay, see ya." Right? And when a woman is asked that question, and she says, well, no. They go, well, like, what's the least amount you can do? They start negotiating. So what's the least you can do for? What's your best offer? What can I get for the money that you're like, they're still trying to get your services, right? Whereas with me, they just go, okay, I want this, or if they try to give me an ultimatum, right?
It's sort of like this
or
perception.
I go, right?
Yeah. So it's a perception that with a woman, and obviously we're generalizing, not every woman is like this, and not every man is like that, successful. Right? Yeah. But the sort of perception that if she's a woman, then if I push a little bit, then I might get somewhere. Whereas with Steve, I push with Steve, like if he says no, I'm not going to bother pushing because it's probably not going to go anywhere. And that just it's all comes from your own upbringing, your psyche, and your interesting. Right. What I thought you were maybe going to say, which I notice in myself when I try to get better at that, and I see it in other women, is I might say no to you, but then I follow that up with more conversation to try and explain why the no is happening and to try to make myself feel better and to justify it.
Yeah. I just say no, right?
Yeah.
I don't say no because of this. No is a complete sentence. I just go, no, I can't, or no, I can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, you'll give a reason perhaps like, I'm like, no, that does not fit with my process. Yeah. But instead of saying, well, but like this and then that, and it's so interesting. I think like, so how does this manifest in business?
This is why it's so great to have a process, because if you have a process and someone tries something, you can just say, I'm sorry, you can blame the process, right? If you have a hard time saying no, you can just say no because it doesn't fit in with my process, right? So you have a scapegoat.
So interesting. I think like now this is like my self-reflection happening right now. I've always said that. I say like, you can rely on your process if you don't feel but I'm realizing now that that's why I've loved having systems in my business. That's why I'm obsessed with process, because I never had the confidence to just like, I know designers in the city who are supremely confident. That's just who they are. They're friends of mine. They're in my circle. And they're just like, no, just do it like this. And I would always be in awe of them. But that was never me. And so for me, having a process was like, it gave me the backbone. And in a way, it's like my business partner, because I can say, that doesn't really fit with our process. And I found when we veer from our process, it's not as successful. And I use it as an excuse. Is that the best way to do it? I don't know, but it freaking works for me. So
exactly.
You got to find the tools in your toolkit that'll work and help you.
It's the same with having a really good airtight contract for each job, right? Because that way you can just blame the contract, right? If someone says, well, I want to get, if you're in the middle of a design process or a design job and they suddenly say, well, since you've got this wall opened up, maybe we could get some pot lights put in here. And they try to add on services. They try and sneak on the services. You can just say, oh, I'd love to help you with that. But our contract says I'm only doing this. So if you'd like to add on those services, it will cost you an additional amount of money, right? You don't just sneak them in. And you just blame the contract, right?
Yeah, it's so true.
I would love to work for you for free, but it doesn't say in our contract. It says you're going to pay me this.
Yeah, right? And that's what we've been relying on lately. We've had quite a few people, I think, with scope creep, and it needs to be seen as a positive. I'm like, great, it's an opportunity to make more money. Awesome, we're already here, but you have to bill for it.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And so that's where I say, we'd be happy to do that. It's outside of the agreed upon scope of work. So I will have my office send over our out of scope agreement. And then of course it reiterates everything. And then we outline all the things that have been asked of us. Sometimes that's a deterrent. I think I've mentioned that here before. Like I had a client a couple of years ago that just my designer was on site. I wasn't there. And she would come back to me and she's like, oh my God, Rebecca, they keep asking, they're showing me pictures of furniture, Crate and Barrel, like they've found. And like, they're just trying to get all that free advice. So I said, well, let's squash it. And so the office sent an email and just said, hey, we've noticed that you've got a lot of additional design questions. We'd be happy to send over. We didn't even send it. We're like, we'll be happy to send over our out of scope agreement, to which the client immediately responded by email. Oh, no, thank you. That won't be necessary. And that ended it right then and there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like the backup. It was my backup, because if I just said, "I'm sorry, this isn't what we agreed to. I have to charge you hourly," I would never have the guts to say that. Let's be honest. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, I would, but
you would.
But if you don't, that's great. Like it's great that you've got that in your back pocket to pull out and say, "Oh, sorry," because because this is the thing. Women are terrified of looking like a bitch, right? They're terrified of being unliked. I don't care if people don't like me.
Oh, I got to work on that. Okay. You need to help me with something right now. This is so relevant. And I think the listeners will like this. So I have a podcast that you guys are all listening to, and I recorded an episode with a guest, someone I don't know. And they reached out to us. They wanted to be on the podcast. Great episode. The episode was live for about a week. And then the guest, or somebody working for the guest, sent us an email and said, so-and-so is really not happy with the fact that certain audio clips where there wasn't great audio, it wasn't cut out. And the guest would like you to remove the section where they talk about this thing because they think it might actually look bad to da-da-da-da-da. They sent this in an email to us. Mm-hmm. And so my gut is like, my instinct is, fuck no. Like, dude, you're on a podcast. Like, then if you don't want people to hear you say it, then don't say it. And audio glitches happen. Have you listened to my podcast? It's not really an edited podcast. It doesn't take away from the value. We are not perfectionists. My motto is progress over perfection. Clearly you didn't. So I'm like getting hot-headed, right? But
and also they reached out to you. They asked to be on your podcast.
I didn't hunt them down. They came to me out of nowhere. and this guest, who shall never be named, never once cross-promoted the podcast when it went live.
Oh,
share on their social, didn't talk about it. Like, it's like it never happened. I'm like, why bother even guesting on a podcast if you're not going to leverage that? So, I mean, they have more followers than I do. Anyways, so, but Vera and I are like, well, we should say we'll do it this time because, maybe if they want to be a guest again. And I'm like hearing myself say this out loud to you and realizing this is probably not the route to go. Because I don't want to upset them and I don't want to burn any bridges and I want them to like us.
Right.
Is that the wrong route? Because that is, my instinct is like, F you.
Yeah. You should have gone with
you didn't even promote me. Like, if you promoted me and you given me all this love, then absolutely. Like, if I felt there was that, but
it's a process. Yeah.
But should I not send an email and say, I feel like I just will do it this one time and then it's a learning lesson for next time. We need to have an agreement with guests and tells them that we have control over editing and anything that is said can or will be used.
I
don't know.
If it had been me, I would have just written back and said, I'm really sorry you feel that way. However, our podcasts are recorded live and as they flow organically, and whatever we talk about we don't do any editing. Whatever comes up, comes up. And you did reach out to us and ask to be on our podcast. So, if you said some things you now regret, that I'm afraid that's on you.
Well, because the thing is, it costs me money to edit it.
Yeah, exactly.
The podcast right now doesn't make us any money. So this is why am I paying for you to sound better on my podcast?
Exactly. Their problem.
Yeah.
Their problem.
Yeah. But I think that's a really concrete, specific example of something I'm actually going through right now. I haven't responded to the email.
I would say, tell them no. Just tell them no. Just say, sorry. This is what we do. You did ask. You asked to be on our podcast. You asked to be a guest. And you agreed to be on, and this is what we do. And if you said some stuff you now regret, or that it's going to come back and bite you in the ass, sorry, but we're not going to take that.
That's not on me.
Yeah, it's not on me. Yeah, I mean, they are completely to blame. I look at that and go, at what point are you going to take some responsibility for your things? Don't just happen to you. You play an active part in everything that happens to you, good and bad, right? You asked to be on a podcast. If you said some embarrassing things, that's on you. You wouldn't have been there.
But it wasn't even, it's the type of thing too, where I'm like, it sounded totally fine. It wasn't, if I agreed and I said, this could be taken the wrong way. Okay. But I disagree with all of the things that were said that I think need to be taken out. I think I've had podcasts with way worse audio glitches and it's been fine. So, but I think this is a good example because it shows, and I'm sure some women listening can relate to my thought process, where your instinct is, no, I should be firm. And then wait a minute. Yes. Yes, right?
You were socialized, right? It's hard to break your years of socialization, right? And this is the point that I want to make. It's a myth. I mean, the fact that if you think you can't say no to something, that's a myth. Of course you can. If I can do it, you can do it. No is a word that doesn't care what your personal pronouns are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to message Vera as soon as we're done and be like, don't send the email. Steve told me not to.
No, there's absolutely no reason why you can't say no. And, one of the big things I really noticed, because as I mentioned, I collaborate a lot with Detail Staging, which is April Cook, right? So I collaborate with a woman. And the stuff that I see her dealing with, and there have been so many times I've said to her, oh my God, like, are you going to take that from them? Like, just go say no. And she'll be like, and then she'll do it. And she'll be like, oh, really? I'm like, yes, go do it. And she'll just do it. And then she'll do it. And she'll be like, oh, like nothing bad happened. And I'm like, yeah,
you're like her business coach.
I'm like her little cheerleader in the back going, no, don't take it from them.
Oh, well, I can't even tell you like how many times my husband has said to me, like when I come home and I'm upset about it, typically it's like a contractor situation because they're mostly male. I mean, it hasn't happened in recent time, thankfully, but there's been so many times where I've come home and I'm like emotionally distraught about something. And he'll just say to me, and I think I've said this to you before, like, this wouldn't be happening if you were a guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's like, they wouldn't have said that to you that way. They wouldn't talk to you that way. And then it was so interesting when we just went through our own home reno. And if anyone's watching this on YouTube, if this ever makes it on YouTube, you can see that we're not done. Whole other story. But so he helped, like my husband, like it's our house. And we were going through and he's like, oh, wow. Yeah. I see how this could be really difficult for a woman. Because he's having the conversations with the contractor. And there's no one's perfect. And so it's like, standing your ground and asking and following up, like, why isn't this done? And he said, wow, I really see now how the gender differences could really come to play when you're working in a renovation.
Oh, yeah. And how having a difficult conversation is received differently if you are a man or a woman, right? Like if I were having a conversation with a contractor who, something was wrong, I would be seen as, someone who wants the job done right. You would be seen as difficult, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so knowing that that's how we might be perceived, we approach the situation differently. Right.
Exactly.
And I'm sure a lot of designers listening are like nodding their heads right now, because how many times we spend so much time, and I'm talking about myself. So this is not you and you're listening and you're like mad at me for generalizing. I am sorry, but this has been my personal experience and my friends and other designers that I've spoken to. So I know that there are people that go through this. And, but I would say that most of the time I am spending a lot of mental strength pre-planning a conversation because I want to make sure that I get my point across, but I want to make sure that it's received in a certain way and that I don't sound A, B, or C, and that I don't burn bridges. And let's what is that expression? Something vinegar versus salt versus.
So you attract more bees with honey than
something
vinegar.
Like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So I'm not good at expressions, but I know there's one.
But see, when I hear that, what I hear is, oh my God, like you spend a lot of time and energy and your life rehearsing your life. You're running a dress rehearsal for a conversation. You need to do that. You can improvise.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think, but I mean, okay, so fine. So these differences exist.
Yes,
I want us to talk about money in a second.
Okay.
But before we get there, because I feel like that's its own topic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's someone at my house.
Oh.
It's not.
Is it the man? Tell him you're busy and he must go away.
No, it might be my child. One second.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so we're just going to keep talking. I'm just going to relocate because this will not be good audio. Sorry, guys, if you're listening, it's probably not going to get edited out either. After what you just heard.
You are not going to get an email from me saying, I would prefer you could edit out that part. You can do whatever you like on your own podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ridiculous.
Hi, honey. You're back already?
Change plans.
Change your plans. Okay.
To go home.
Okay, I'm going to go upstairs. Mommy's just in a podcast.
For those of you,
Okay.
if this makes to YouTube, we all get a tour of your house as you go through the
Yeah,
house.
oh yeah, that's right. I'm upstairs now. If you're,
Yeah.
maybe this will be the first one. I've never put any of these recordings on YouTube. There's my bathroom.
Oh, nice.
There's
nice.
better tours of my house on YouTube than this podcast, though.
Oh my God, this is hilarious.
So now we're. Oh, actually, let me go to my son's room. There's a desk there. Okay, so what my question was, what do we do in these situations? Like, okay, so, I mean, we're not like lost.
Yes.
How do we approach these situations, in your opinion, when there's a difficult situation that comes up in business? That maybe let's not talk about the money ones because those ones are a bit of a unique. But like,
Right.
how do you act more like a man, for lack of a better term? Well,
I mean, I think you have to just remember you've been socialized to be a people pleaser. And so you are going to, a lot of it is going to be in your own head. It's going to be your feelings, right? You're going to feel like I'm being difficult. People are going to like me. I would say, let go of the need to be liked and just make your case in a very plain and calm manner, because I'm telling you right now, as a woman, because I've seen this with April, as a woman, if you're having an issue with something that's not being, up to snuff, up to scratch, and you have to, have an awkward conversation, the first thing you should expect is you're going to get pushback that puts it on you. So it's going to be like, oh, did I do something to upset you? Or you're getting emotional. Or, okay, calm down. That kind of thing. Men are never told to calm down, by the way. So be prepared that's how your pushback is going to first look. And that's just gaslighting. They're just trying to put it on you. If you have an issue if you have a contractor or whatever who isn't doing the job that you're paying them for, my attitude when I look at that is, you agreed to do this job for this amount of money, and I am paying you to do it. I expect you to do what we agreed to, and that is the end of it, right? And so I don't have to negotiate because I'm expecting you to do what I'm paying you for. So if you're a woman in that situation, you can just say that in a polite manner, like, this is what I expected, and this is what you agreed to, and this is what I'm paying you to do, and I'm paying you to do this, so I need you to do it. This isn't about me. I am not upset. I'm simply telling you, this is what you agreed to, and you haven't met it. And so please do that.
Yeah, and I think that's really great advice.
Who would think you were a bitch if you said, please do that? Please do the thing you agreed to.
I think it's so funny. It's like, and I say it all the time, like, it's so easy to say, stop caring what other people think. Yes. Right? Okay, yeah, we all know that it shouldn't matter what other people think, but it's hard to change your biology, if you will. Like, it's hard to change who you are. And part of it, I think, is just with every experience that you have, every little experience, push yourself out of your comfort zone. And that's what I think I've found. Like, I've had a really challenging last year and a bit in business, just with like situations that it's growing pains, right? And so there's a reason they call it growing pains. Right. And so I've had situations that have been really uncomfortable. And a lot of the times the discomfort for me comes from a conversation that I have to have. Usually it's a conversation or a situation where I am doing the thing that may not make me as likable.
Yeah.
And with every single one, like, my heart is racing, I'm anxious, and I've had my operations manager to help me coach me through some of these situations where it's like, you just have to say it like this, and you have to say it like that. And, whether it be with a client, with an employee, with all kinds of, people in the industry, it's been very eye-opening that every little time I do it, I feel so much relief afterwards. Mm-hmm. But the lead up to not doing or saying the thing that's just going to keep people liking you is very anxiety ridden for me. I have to say, like, it is, but that doesn't mean that that it's not worth it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the other thing, you do it and you go, oh, the sky didn't fall.
Exactly.
Right. So it was all in my head, right? Fear. I have a friend who says that fear is false expectations appearing real. You expected that the sky would fall and it didn't, right? So,
it's the fear of something that's non-existent potentially happening in the future.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, totally.
But it could just as easily not happen as happen, right? So just deal with it when it happens. Cross that bridge when you come to it.
Yeah. I mean, I've made so many mistakes in business for sure, because I've had conversations or made decisions, whether it's with staffing or taking on projects, because I was worried how I would be perceived or if I would be liked. So I've said yes to projects because I'm like, well, they're so nice. Even though my initial instinct is not the right fit.
Yeah.
I've said yes. I've hired people that I was like, well, I don't know. I've kept people on for longer, even though I knew it was time to go, but I didn't want to have the uncomfortable conversations and to let them go. Like it really manifests itself in all the aspects of business. It's so interesting.
But you also have to realize too that, the idea of how you are being perceived, that is bombarded on women constantly. Every commercial, every magazine ad is, you need this foundation, you need this lipstick, you need this bra, you need this hair color, right? You have to, women put so much effort into how they look and how they are and they translates also into how they are perceived. That's a big part of how they're perceived, right? So it translates into being perceived. You must be likable, both in your looks and your mannerisms, right? And men just aren't socialized like that, so they just don't care.
Yeah.
But it's, as I say, it's false. It's a false perception. You can overcome it, and if I can do it, you can do it too. Yeah. I encourage women to do it.
And we're still doing it. It's not like you get to this pinnacle point as a woman in business where you're like, oh, I'm not that way anymore. I mean, maybe that happens. I'm not there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But it's like every little milestone that happens, every little situation, it's trusting your gut, right? And holding your ground. And the next time it might get a little bit easier, it might get harder again, but in the long run, it will benefit you.
Yeah.
It may never get easier. Oh God. Don't say that.
It may not. But the thing is, once you've been through it once, and the sky didn't fall, and you didn't, and you didn't drop dead, like, then okay, well, this may be difficult. What's about to happen might be awkward and difficult, but I know I'm not going to die, and I know the sky isn't going to fall. So I'll just get through it.
Yeah. And what I see too is recently within our design firm is, because I have a lot less contact now with the clients. I'm sort of the initial contact, but once they hire us, like, I'm not the one going to site. I'm not the one sending the emails. But in some ways, it actually is great for me because it makes me a much higher authority in the sense that, like, I'll have designers on site and they'll say, oh, well, I don't know, like, the client was saying this. And so, like, I'm like, I guess I should just go and do that thing. And it's easy for me because I have a little bit of separation now to say, absolutely not. That is not in the scope of work. That is extra. So you can either tell her or tell the client, I spoke with Rebecca and blah, 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 or you can just say it, because it's so interesting to see now be on the other side where when you're the front line of defense and you're maybe also newer in the industry, you just want to people please.
Yeah.
But ultimately actually ends up not helping you in the long run. It usually backfires.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about money.
Okay. I was going to say, though, it backfires even just in the sense that you start hating your job, and that's not good. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And totally, oh my God, because how many of us designing women, I loved that show, by the way. How many of us?
You will never alter drapes in Atlanta again.
I got to rewatch that somewhere. Where can I find that show? It's got to be somewhere.
The lights went out in Georgia.
I don't remember any lines, but I love that show. I had no idea back then that I wanted to be a designer. But the thing about that is that, like, we're like, for the designing women who are listening, it comes back. What did we say? It comes back to get you in the butt, in the sense is like,
you start hating your job.
You start hating your job and you run around and you're like overworked and overtired. And maybe you're posting on social media things like, oh, burnout is real. Like, oh, finally a day for me. Or, you start your day with anxiety because the list is never ongoing, never ending. And it's because you probably said yes to too many people. You're trying to please too many people, whether you run your own business or you work for someone else. I have this conversation with women on my team all the time. I say, I don't want you to be a yes person, because I've had that in the past. And then burnout, and I need you to communicate with me. If I say, hey, can we do this thing? And you don't have the time, tell me. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to think differently of you. And what I notice now, I have men on my team, which is so exciting.
All right. That's what you do. Yeah.
I have two guys on my team. It's like so different. There's so much more like, yeah, I can't get that tomorrow, but I'll do that next week. Or you told me that the priority was A. Are you shifting to priorities? And I'm like, oh, no. Yeah, thank you for reminding me because I had forgotten. It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about money.
Let's talk about money.
Moving on to money and the money mindset.
Money.
So this actually came out. This comes up a lot too on the designer meetup group and stuff. There was a woman who wrote about. It was fairly recently. She wrote about someone called her for a consultation, and she did the consultation. And at the end of the consultation, the client said, like, "Well, what am I paying you for?" And she said, I felt really guilty. Should I give her a refund? And so some women, commented like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. That's sort of awkward. Like maybe you could offer to do X, Y, Z or whatever, that kind of thing." And I chimed in with, "What did you tell her in the phone conversation you were going to do in the consultation? And what did you do?" And she wrote back and said, "I told her I was going to do X, Y, Z, and I did that." And I said, "No refund. You told her what was going to happen. She maybe expected other stuff was going to happen, but she shouldn't have. That was on her, right? You said what you were going to do and you did it. You said you were going to do something for X amount of dollars. You did it. She owes you X amount of dollars, no refund." And I think I even said something like, "I wouldn't even know how to do a refund. Like I know how to use a credit card, a debit card, and cash. I only know how to receive e-transfers and deposit them into my business account. I don't know how to give anybody money other than cash or a check or a debit card or a credit card. I don't know how to give a client money back. And I've never had to. And I never will because it's just ridiculous."
Yep.
And she was like, "Oh yeah." And when I said that, she was like, "Oh yeah, thanks." Like, I guess I said, "Yeah, like you feel like you feel like she doesn't like you."
Yes.
Right. So you've got to do something to make the situation better. If she doesn't like you, it's okay. You didn't actually do anything wrong.
Yeah,
She maybe
it's about
thinks
her,
that you
not
did.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, that is such a common experience. I have friends in the city who are established designers who will say that to me. "Well, I feel bad because in the end, it really wasn't the right fit for me. And so I told them that probably this project wasn't really the right fit. And so I felt kind of guilty because now they have to go spend money on another designer." And I'm like, so what? They paid you for your service. You gave them value. 100% this designer is giving them value while she's there.
Yes, exactly.
And I think, so let's talk about the money side, because a lot of that is a money mindset.
Yeah. And so this actually became really clear to me. So I have two older brothers. One brother works in the arts and one brother works in business. And so my brother, who's in business, works for a big company and, makes really good money and has worked for companies his entire adult life and has always made, good money and now makes very good money. And, we grew up in the same house. This is what was interesting to me. So we grew up in the same house. So our influences, our early childhood influences around money were the exact same. But, when I was younger, my mindset around money is that, I have to have, enough. There has to be like just enough to get by kind of thing. And so I would generally make enough to get by, but there was never like a surplus, right? Never like a big surplus. So there was always a sense of urgency, like there was never quite enough. His attitude around money is, and has been, I think forever, is they print money every day. Money gets made every day. Your job is just to figure out how to get it to you.
Whoa, I love that.
Yeah. And when I started adopting that mindset, money started to come to me in much bigger ways.
So, the money mindset piece, and for those people listening who are like, what the heck are you talking about? Mindset, money? Yeah. Like, what is that? The idea is that like you are conditioned from a young age, the same way we're conditioned to be polite and nice as maybe women, right, or men are conditioned to be a certain way. You're conditioned, your mindset and your perception of money and how you see money. So if you grow up some people grow up in a household where money is like the devil, they're taught that money doesn't grow on trees.
Eat the
you
rich.
should just,
Rich people are awful.
yeah, the rich are evil, keep every penny that you've got because you don't know where the next one's coming from. And what that does then in your adult life, you don't even know that it's happening, but it's happening subconsciously in every transaction that you have, and the way you operate your life has to do with your mindset, the thought process that you have that surrounds money. And some people grow up with a very positive money mindset.
Yeah.
Like that example where it's like, maybe it doesn't grow on trees, but it gets printed every day and it's out there for anyone to have.
It's there for you to take. It is there for you to take. It is there. And, I think you need to sort of understand that everything. So we talked about this in the last one where I said, I'm not into the hippy dippy woo woo. Right. But I will say I have been, it's the same that money, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, I can tell you, I have been broke and happy, and I have been well off and very comfortable and depressed. And I would take depressed and well off over broke and happy any day, right? It's like money, there's a comfort to money, right? Just having, I can buy therapy, right?
I mean, I don't know if I would take depressed any day.
Well, I've been sad. I've been sad.
Not to downplay, what that is, but I would say
things to make me feel better.
What money can do, and actually one of our students who's in our designers room and who did Power of Process, Jamie, posted on Instagram the other day, and she posted this thing. Her dog was going through, I don't know what exactly, some illness or some injury, and had to have all these vet visits and all these surgeries. And she's like, I don't care what anybody says. I love money. Money makes it possible for me to pay these vet bills to take care of my dog. She's like, I love money. And it was really she's really talks a lot about mindset, and that's sort of her passion. But I love that example because money is not evil. And maybe you don't, if you have money, it doesn't mean you're happy, for sure. Yeah. But if you have money,
it also doesn't mean you're evil if you have it.
But if you have money, you can do things that bring joy. For me, it's travel. Oh my gosh, I want to have an abundance of money and be financially free so I can take my kids and go on African safari. We can take off for 2 weeks of March break and I don't know, go on a yacht in the Mediterranean. That would be phenomenal. And think about the memories we could create doing those fun things. Yes, we can create memories doing other things, but wouldn't it be nice to have the option to do all the things and not feel restricted or restrained by what's in your bank account?
Yeah. And I mean, I have a lot of, creative actor friends and whatnot who often have this attitude that, the rich are evil, rich people are evil. And I'm like, if you think rich people are evil, you're going to have to get over that if you ever want to be one.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, that's a good thing. But I think what people really need to understand is that, everything is energy. This is what I was talking about the hippy dippy woo woo. This is true. Everything is energy, right? So, and energy has a frequency, and money is one of those things. Money has an energy to it, and there is a frequency. We do call it currency, after all, right? So there's a frequency, and if you think, and so frequencies have highs and lows, right? So if your attitude is, if your thoughts are that money is evil, or I shouldn't ask for too much, that has a low frequency. And if you think money is abundant, it's printed every day, and your job is to figure out how to get it to you, that has a high frequency. And so it will attract money, right? Energy attracts itself, right? So there's that law of attraction, right? So if you have that mindset that money is plentiful and I just have to figure out how to get it to me, you will come up with ways to get it to you. You just kind of will.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny. I remember when I lived in Spain, there was this girl that I was friends with. She was from the UK, and she would just shop and spend all this money. And I was like, oh my, you're spending a lot of money. She's like, I just think it's, money's going to flow through me. If I am putting it back out into the economy, it'll come back at me. And it was the first time I'd ever heard someone with such what at the time I thought was an extreme view of money. And I was like, but you could also put it out and it just doesn't come back. That was what I was thinking at the time, right? Because I was very poor. I was poor. I wasn't living on the street, but I I think my rent was $100,
Right.
and I think I made like $300 a month in equivalent.
Right.
So like the rest was like very carefully measured out to pay for my tapas and to
Right.
do any traveling. And I thought, wow. But I mean, that doesn't mean you need to be careless with your money. You want to
No.
learn and be smart about it.
Still be
Because if you
investing
have,
in it and having an RSP.
yeah. But so for the mindset work, I can tell you for me, it's something that's not like, if anyone's listening right now, it's not like you can just decide, that's it.
Oh yeah,
of course,
no.
I'm just going to believe what Steve's saying, and money, they print it every day. It takes a lot of work, and it's something I've been working on
all life. Your whole life, you've been trained to think the thing, whatever it is you think, you've spent your whole life thinking it.
And I mean, it's similar to what we were talking about before, like just saying no or standing up and not worrying what people think. Like you can't just say like, I don't care what people think now. And all of a sudden you've changed. I know I've done a lot of like exercises in journals where I'm writing down like, what are the stories that I have? Like one of the great exercises I did recently was just writing down all the stories I have as it pertains to money in my life. So any situations that I encountered in my life and like from that are either happened to me or just were observed in my world, right? So like when I was a kid, I remember that, a family friend declared bankruptcy and that was a big deal, and like how it affected my friends, and that, my dad and like our family business was a bit of a mess when it came to like family feuding. And I've always said I'd never go into business, like whatever it might be, and like put it all on a piece of paper. And when you do that and you look at the repeated stories, it's like, oh my God, no wonder I'm constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. No wonder I hit a ceiling. Like, no wonder my business does $1.2 million in sales. I mean, there was a pandemic. And then all of a sudden I can't get past it because I'm constantly waiting. It's like, I feel like I can get so far. This is my own personal money story. Obviously, I'm sharing with all of you as I share it all. But when I wrote down all the stories and all the experiences I had growing up as a kid and into my own life now with my husband and my family, there's a lot of repeated themes. And sometimes the very first step, at least from what I'm seeing, is acknowledging and recognizing what your mindset is.
Yeah. I mean, basically it's basically like any kind of, past trauma, right? You have to recognize it. You have to kind of heal from it, but you also have to understand and recognize the triggers, right? And so that when you encounter those triggers, that you just go, this is just a trigger, right? So you can control, you don't get overwhelmed by it. You can control it, right? So yeah, but I mean, you have to remember too, that there's a feeling around money, right? Like when you have to think about, when you get that check from the client, right, how it makes you feel, like, and when they're happy with the job and they give you the check, like it makes you feel. And this, you always talk about doing flat fee for your services, right? This is a great one, but it's a great example of why you need to really figure out your fee and estimate your quote properly so that you get paid for the work that you do. Because if you agree to do a job, a job for a flat fee, at the end, the client is going to give you the check that they owe you, regardless, right, of whether you underquoted, overquoted, or got it just right. But this is about you. If you get it just right, you get paid for the amount of work that you did. When you get that check, you feel like a superstar. But if you realize when you get handed that check that you actually like overquoted and you kind of feel like you're robbing them, or that even worse, you underquoted, that check, when they hand you that check, it feels like they're handing you a bag of dog turds. Like it just, like there is a feeling to receiving that money. But the bottom line is the client doesn't know the difference. The client agreed to pay you a set amount for the job, and you did the job, and they're paying you, right? And they're happy, right? So it doesn't matter, right? It's about you and how you felt about it. So you need to sort of recognize too how you feel when you see a certain number in your bank account, and how you feel when you don't see that number, right? How you feel when you see more than that number, right? You have to think about how it makes you feel. This is, when people do a lot of shopping, a lot of retail therapy, right? Absolutely, it makes you feel a certain way when you're spending money. It's like when you go to Holt Renfrew, and they give you, you buy like a hanky and they put it in that pink bag, right? And you're walking around with that pink bag and you feel like, screw you, world, I'm better than you, that kind of thing. Because it's that bag, it gives you that feeling. Like I went to Holt Renfrew and it's an expensive place and I bought a hanky, right, for $10 or whatever, $20. But it was all I could afford. But I feel, it makes me feel a certain way. So that, again, feelings are also energy, right? So how you feel about money. Do you want to?
I like that. I think that's actually an interesting exercise for all of us to do, is like every time we are in contact with money, whether it's looking at our bank account, receiving a check, purchasing something, what is the emotion you go through? Because I know for me, it's something that I've recently recognized, or it's always been a thing, but I just really have started paying attention to, is quite often when I purchase something, I immediately have a sense of regret.
Oh yeah.
So I'll spend the money and I immediately feel guilty that I spent the money. So I'm just trying to break that down and sort of figure out, what does that mean? Like, where is that coming from? What does that mean for the growth of my business and my, creating generational wealth? Every time I'm investing in something, why is it? Because I don't really have a handle on my numbers. And so I don't know how much I have to spend, probably. Is it because I grew up in a boom bust household where we had tons and we would go on big shopping trips. And then a year later, it was like, sorry, we can't buy you any new clothes. And then as a child, you don't understand. You're like, but I don't understand. We had so much before. We had this big fancy house and then we had to sell it. We moved to this little house, right? And so you internalize that. And then in your life, it's like, and this is for me where I say the other shoe's going to drop. For me, my money mindset, and someone listening maybe can relate to this. And that's why I share my stories, because I know there's other people out there, and like there's tons of people who are listening to us right now who are like, oh my God, yes, yes, yes. But where, like, if I go to make a purchase and maybe it's just buying groceries for the office on the business credit card, and I get the bill and I'm like, oh shoot, maybe I could have been smarter with my money. Maybe I could have gone somewhere else and spent less. It's this constant fear of it's going to be all gone, because that's was my experience growing up. It was like, haves, right, and then have less, and then haves. I never grew up have not. I grew up very fortunate, but there were real fluctuations in our ability to spend, and it really has affected me. And so how do I get out of that? Right now, I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think it's part of it is what you said. It's how do you feel? Recognizing how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, I used to have, when I was younger, I had a fear of money. Like I was afraid that I used to think if I made too much money, that I would lose it. Like I would screw up the taxes and go to jail, or I would spend it on all kinds of things and just piss it away. Like I wouldn't be able to handle it properly. And one of the ways that actually, and I can tell you that I have overcome that. I mean, because when I went into business for myself a few years ago, I was like, you need to get better at money. I mean, there was a time when I was like a few years behind on filing my taxes. Now, thank God I didn't owe, because it would have killed me, right? I got small refunds, but, so I got a little chunk of money when I got them together. But I went from being, behind on filing my taxes to like now I file religiously every March, and I do month-end reviews, and I know every receipt, it is photographed, or the digital copy is sent. I have files for everything. I'm doing a check myself, like I do it myself. I make sure how much I brought in. I make sure I've got every receipt. I went from having the reason I was behind on my taxes before years ago was because I would just put all my receipts in a shoebox, right? And at the end of the year, at the end of the year, when you put all your shit into a shoebox, at the end of the year, you have a box full of shit. And it's a nightmare, and it's overwhelming. You don't know where to start. And so you just kind of keep pushing it off, right? That's how I got into that position. And so I realized the trigger was I allowed myself to get disorganized. So if I just stayed a little bit on top of it every day or every month, it would be perfectly manageable. And I mean, it's gone from a shoebox full of shit to, sending my accountant a spreadsheet for the year. And here's what came in. Here's what the expenses are. I have all the receipts, blah, blah, blah. He looks over everything and just pop, and we're done.
So it sounds to me
like he's even said, you've made a huge change in your life. Like, it's great.
Good for you. Because I can tell you, I was like that. I was in this room that I'm sitting in right now. That's now my son's room was my office. And it was come tax time. My accountant would be like, okay, like send me all your expenses. And I'd be like, all right. And I would spend a day and a half on the floor and I would have categories. I'd have a piece of paper. I mean, it'd be like car, like office. I don't know what the expenses were. And I would pile them. And then I would type them all up. And so I had no idea what my expenses were until the end of the year. And then probably there were things missing because I didn't have every receipt. Yeah. What a disaster. I was behind too. But what I was going to say to about that is that, you know, it sounds to me like your confidence with the money and the spending now comes from knowing your numbers. Because if you wait till the end of the year to compile everything, how you're not tracking your expenses. You don't know what it costs to run your business.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I just kind of had this, I did kind of flip a switch and just go, look, if you want to not have this experience of getting behind and being overwhelmed, you just need to do, it's like diet and exercise. Yes, I would rather have cake than salad. But I know if I eat cake, and don't exercise, this is what's going to happen. So I have to do this, right? So it's kind of the same, right? It's like, if you don't want to be overwhelmed at the end of the year and spending a day and a half figuring out your stuff to get it to the accountant, you just need to do this little bit. It was like when I was in the power of process. Because remember, I was the one who I would set aside 7 to 8.
Oh my God. You were like 5-star A+ student. Like tell everyone again, because it's so good in case they haven't heard the other episode.
So the course would drop, each section of the course would drop on a Monday. And we would have like a FaceTime group meeting on Thursdays. And so I would set aside 7 to 8 p.m. every evening, starting Monday. And I would work for 1 hour on whatever the lesson was that week. And I diligently, and so what generally happened was by the time Thursday rolled around, I either had it done or I was very close to being done. So I could get the most out of the FaceTime because I wasn't just like listening to everybody else talking about what they were doing. My questions were few because I was generally pretty close or done, right? So I probably didn't have a lot of questions, right? And so I was able to contribute and I was able to listen, but I got things done. And that was how I finished. I was one of the first people to finish, I think, or the first person to finish.
You were the first person.
I think it was me, and I think it was maybe Laura, or I forget who it was. Somebody else finished as well.
Yeah, you're right. I think Laura, she's a superstar too.
But that's what I did. I diligently set aside a little time. It's like when you set aside time to exercise or go get your groceries or whatever. It's like, this is something that needs to be done. If I don't do it, I will get behind. And so I just, high water or hell, 7 to 8. That's what I did.
I remember that. I was so impressed. You could like teach a course on
the other thing too is that
how to actually make yourself do things.
I'm single and live alone, right? Single, live alone.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You did share that. I appreciated that you shared that because people with like kids running around.
Yeah, it was easy for me. It was easy for me to set that aside. But yes, I don't know. If you have kids, set aside like midnight to 1 or I don't know, something.
No, don't do that. Trust me. Then you wake up so tired. But I will say, like, even right now in our designers room coaching, because at the beginning of the year in our coaching group, we were talking about finances and money. And one of our designers, we're committing to habits for the year because I'm all about habits right now. And it's like, let's find a little habit, just the little ones that will make a big difference. It's all about the one thing, right? And so she said that new habit I'm going to do is every Monday morning I've set aside, and it's called Money Mondays. And I was like, I love that. It's a catchy term. And so she's going to take that time to do whatever she needs to do to understand the finances, run the numbers, do anything to do with money. And I love it. It's brilliant because it's a habit, like you said, it's committing to a time slot, and it's what works for her. But I think anyone listening, like if you're like, oh yeah, good for Steve. That's great that he managed to like do a spreadsheet every month. Like that's a lot of work and I'm too busy and I can't do that. Yep. Well, then maybe you need to find something else that works for you. And maybe it's not like Steve going whole hog on the opposite end of the spectrum, but maybe it is just setting aside a time. Like I do think weekly, anything less frequent than a week, it's hard to get into a habit of, but you could also just hire a part-time bookkeeper, like a few hours a month if you're listening, and they can be the ones to go through your bank statement and then bug you for the receipts. sometimes I know, I mean, you're so good. You're such an independent, self-motivated guy. But I know for me, it really wasn't until I had somebody else to hold me accountable
Hmm.
that I was really tracking, right? It wasn't until I had a bookkeeper who was like,
Okay.
we need to reconcile the month. I'm like, what does reconcile mean? Like, that's
Right.
really unnecessary. I did this once a year and I was fine.
Right. Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, yeah, I'll find that receipt. I'll send it to you. I don't know where it is. Oh, this is so time consuming and it's so annoying. And I wouldn't always get it done by the end of the month. It'd be like the end of the next month, but that started the habit.
Yeah. I mean, but if it makes you feel any better, I wasn't always this way, right? Like, when I was behind on my taxes, this was a while ago, but when I had that shoebox full of shit, I opened that shoebox up and like, there were like bills, that like hydro bills and stuff where the money comes out of my account automatically, but I hadn't even opened them. Like I was a person that didn't even like open bills sometimes, right? And now it's like I open everything, right? It forces me to open the bill to look at the amount, so I know how much is coming out. I put it in my little ledger, right? I do everything up digitally, and right at the end of the month, I see what's happening, and I just kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your numbers. Yeah. I think a lot of us are afraid to look, because I know that's been me. I'm afraid to look because I'm afraid of what I'm going to find. And oftentimes what you find is actually better than what you think.
It's better than what you think. And if it's worse than what you think, you needed to know that. Because if you were, if it was worse than what you thought, you thought it was better, obviously you thought it was better, right? So you could have really gotten into a hole. So it actually is a blessing that you discovered that it was not what you thought it was, because you could very easily have got that to spiral out, to snowball. It would snowball, right? So you could wind up being really, really in a bad position, right? But because you caught it early, right? You're like, oh, okay. So now I need to know, I need to shift something or do something to correct this so that it doesn't get worse. So I need to at least, make this even.
Totally. I mean, I used to owe back taxes. I've talked about this before. Yeah. It wasn't owe back taxes. It was that I would get my corporate income tax statement, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, this new job I got was about that much. So here you go, government. So it was like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So eventually I caught up. But yeah, it's hard. We're doing all the things. Okay. We've run out of time, as always. Okay. So much good conversation.
I have my nugget of my wisdom.
You're so prepared. I love you. Okay.
Of course, best student.
What is your last nugget of wisdom to share?
It's money related. Okay, so I think we touched about this before. It's about trade discounts, right? I know you love it.
Yes.
So trade discounts. I'm speaking to every designer out there. You are the trade. The client is the client. They are not entitled to your trade discount. You shouldn't share them with them. You shouldn't, pass it on to them. You shouldn't be giving them your discount card to stores. The trade discount is for you. You are the trade. It is basically a commission that the vendor is giving you because you acted as an unpaid salesperson for their company to, get goods and services from them, right? So stop thinking of it as a discount and start thinking of it as a commission, because a commission is something you earn and a discount is something you just get. So you earned it, right? It is a commission. It is not a discount, and you are entitled to every penny, and you shouldn't pass it on. There's no law saying you should, right? It is there for you. If your client wants a trade discount, they can go to design school and get a degree and get a business license and go to the store and fill out all the paperwork required and get their own discount, their trade account. They can do all the work. You did all the work, and it's a commission. It's not.
Preach.
I said this on your designer meetup page, and you were like, "Oh my God, I never thought of it that way."
Yeah, I love that.
Think of it. Yes,
I love that. If you guys want more nuggets of wisdom from Steve, definitely show up in the designer meetup group and ask him all the questions. But I love that you shared that, because it's true. Like, there's so many ways to look at it, but I think that's a great perspective, because so many designers are still passing on their discounts or their trade cost, and they're leaving money on the table. And I can't tell you how many designers I talk to who say, man, wow, I didn't realize how much money I was leaving on the table.
Yeah.
So Thank you for sharing that nugget. That is massively important.
Yeah.
I had this idea for a book. I'm like, I'm going to write a book and it's going to be all the nuggets of wisdom from the podcast.
Yes.
And then I can elaborate and like that guest can contribute. I'm like, this is the best because the nuggets are the best part.
There was actually a few times on the designer meetup group where a woman has asked a question about something, often about discounts or money or something. And someone has gone, Steve, can you reply to this woman?
I've seen that
a few times. Tell this woman what you need to know.
You just need to have like a template where you copy and paste it.
Right.
Yeah.
Please just scroll down to this date when I told the same thing to this person.
Yeah. Frequently asked question. The most frequently asked question. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you so much. That's so good. So good. Thank you.
Thanks
Knowing
for
your
having
numbers, your mindset, men and women, so many topics. I feel like we could go on for another hour.
Overcome your socialization. You can do it. Overcome your fear of money. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Where can everyone find you other than in the Facebook group?
Other than the Facebook group, on Instagram, I'm at Steve Ryan Designs. Facebook, my Facebook page is Steve Ryan Designs. My website is steveryandesigns.com. That's where you can find me. And I also frequently collaborate, as I said, with Detail Staging. They're also on Instagram and Facebook. You can see projects that we worked on together with. Something just got posted today.
Ooh.
Big transfer before and after. So We've got tons of stuff coming up you can see.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our audience.
No
As
problem.
always, you'll be back, I'm sure.
Be back.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was such a phenomenal conversation. I love having these unscripted, authentic conversations with colleagues in the industry, with past students, because there's so much that we can learn just from having conversations out loud. It's almost like this podcast sometimes is as if I'm having a conversation with someone and you're just sitting at the other end of the room because it's really not, I don't have any I'm going to ask these 5 questions. I'm not that girl. I'm just not that girl. I like to wing it. I like it to be, I like it to come from the heart. And I think Steve's conversation was really powerful. I want to add that Steve and I come at this from our own personal experiences and the experiences with other people in our lives. We did generalize that women are one way and men are another way. I recognize that that is not the case for all women and men. But from what I have seen, and it's based on my experience, and this podcast is really always about, here's what I've learned, or here's what I'm learning. I think it'll probably benefit somebody out there. So that's what it is. So take it with a grain of salt. If you are not like me, well, good for you. And maybe you can help me. And I have so much respect for female entrepreneurs that are not afraid to speak up, who can say no, who are not afraid to ask for the money, who have a strong money mindset. That is amazing. Share the knowledge. But I think Steve's conversation that really came out of our Facebook group, because he's been such a vocal contributor to conversation and helping lift other designers up and giving great advice. It's nice to have a male perspective and to see that sometimes the way we are operating in our business, it's not our fault. It's how we've been conditioned. And so there are ways that we can change our response and our reactions to situations to better benefit the growth of our business and the growth of our wealth. Because let's be honest, we all want to be wealthy. We want to make money so that we don't have to worry about the cost of things. At least for me, I want to be able to go on vacation and not continue and not have to think about money. Honestly, that is what drives me. Travel is what drives me. Experiences with my family. That is where I see financial wealth taking me. But it is something that I'm working through, as I shared in the podcast. Anyhow, let me know if you guys liked this episode. If talking about mindset is something that interests you, we can certainly do more of it. And, of course, if you're interested in Power of Process, you can ask Steve questions about the course. It is coming up, and you can check out more at RebeccaHay.com/Power of Process. I will also do an episode just sort of breaking down what the course is all about so that you guys can get a clearer picture of how it can help your business. And that's it. I'll see you soon.